there's a saying, not all heroes wear capes. Well, these are my heroes. It's my dad, Michael Fulbright, and my grandmother, Carolyn Fulbright. Since my birth, we've been through a lot together. I honestly think that when they see me here on this stage, or if I tell them about a new accomplishment, that they're shocked, because we come from humble beginnings that I try to avoid talking about. See, I can't seem to tell my story without shame. Shame that I believe is deeply connected to, or at least peripheral to, this feeling of the imposter syndrome. See, I'm that individual who cannot internalize their success. I'm also afraid of being exposed for who I am in proximity to a mother that I do not know. Organizing this story has been nerve-wracking. It's been anxiety-inducing. My friends know I tried to not get on this stage. But it's also been therapeutic. Raise your hand if you love your therapist. That's how therapeutic it's been for me. See, I've been trying to figure out, how do I tell my story without having to tell my story? How do I get the same point across about the imposter syndrome without attaching emotions to it? How do I make myself comfortable in front of you all without having to be seen? Long story short, I can't and I won't, because what most people know about me is that I fight for people to be seen as whole, to be seen as equals. So I can't continue to talk about my story without talking about the fullness and wholeness of my life and what shaped me to who I am today. So to start, I was lying on the carpet on my grandmother's bedroom floor around this time last October, and I was asking my grandmother about my childhood. I don't know much about it. And I was like, "Grandmother, where's my grandma? Where's my mom? Why doesn't she exist?" And so my grandmother proceeds to get out of her chair, and she walks over to the closet, and she says, "Well, I guess we're at that age." Y'all, I was 26. I don't know at what point you tell kids about the traumatic moments that have happened to them in the Lifetime movies that I've seen. You're 17 or 18, but 26, so we're doing it. I love my grandmother for this. And so she goes to her closet and she pulls out this chest of court documents and puts it in front of me. And she says, "Read this." And so I'm going through these court documents and I'm reading things about my mother that I've always heard about and see that they're true. See, I read that my mother had been in and out of jail for years, that she did drugs, and she was a sex worker at one point. I start to read things about a young Mercedes that I didn't know existed, moments that I didn't know happened to me. Like San Diego police barging into a living room and finding me on a soiled mattress with several other children and drugs sprawled all throughout the room. I realized in that document that the first time that I entered foster care was 9 months old. The second time I was celebrating my first birthday, alone, in foster care, 1 year old. But remember, I talked about those heroes. So my dad, he joined the military at 18. He's an Oak Cliff native, and so yay, Oak Cliff. He moved from Dallas to San Diego to join the military. He was a sailor. He met my mother at 20, and he heard that I was in foster care the second time around and went above and beyond to call my grandmother and tell her, "I need you to get my baby girl out of foster care." And so my grandmother moves from Dallas to San Diego and starts the custody process for us. There, I'm going through the documents again, and I realize that at the age of 6 that my mother said that she doesn't want me around, that she's dead, and I can look her up when I'm 18. Those first few years of living not feeling valued or wanted or belonging to any one person, I do believe explains much of the imposter that I feel that I am. And so we continue to go on. My dad and my grandmother get custody of me, and we move from San Diego to Vallejo to Oakland. My dad wants me to be with my immediate family in Dallas, and so he asked for a transfer back home to Dallas. We go from Dallas to Arlington to North Dallas to Cedar Hill. See, I've always known how it feels to be the new kid, being a military kid. So I tried to either make myself invisible or I'd act out to fit in. I remember in elementary and middle school, friends would ask me, like, "Where's your biological mother? Like, why isn't she around?" And I would say, "Well, she died of a terminal disease. I don't want to talk about it." I mean, how do you tell your 9-year-old friends that your mom doesn't want you around? In high school, when I was applying for colleges, I remember thinking that I'll never get into college because my parents didn't go. Even in my young adulthood, I would think that if I have lapses of forgetfulness or struggle with writing materials, that I had developmental deficiencies or something because my mother used cocaine. See, I would tell myself, I'm the daughter of a sex worker, I'm the daughter of a drug addict. I don't belong. I'm not enough. So I tried to overcompensate and hide all the traits of her and be everything that she was not realizing most recently that I've been trying to prove myself to someone that doesn't exist. And so I enrolled into the University of North Texas, and I got heavily involved in campus activities. I was a student body vice president. I was the president of the Top 40 Leaders. I was elected to the National Youth Work Committee of the NAACP, the largest and oldest organization in our country. My first opportunity to travel abroad was Israel, where I got to study the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I got an opportunity to also be a part of a National Geographic documentary where I got to travel to China and study US-China relations as it relates to young people. I remember on that trip journaling in my notebook and saying, I can't wait to tell my mom about the amount of selfies that are going to be on the internet because everyone thought I was Tyra Banks. This is like a real thing that happened. I'm serious. Like, people thought I was Tyra Banks. They were like, let's take a selfie. But she wasn't there for those moments. I wasn't enough. At UNT, I studied political science because I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be a lawyer for the kids that may have been swept up in the welfare or foster care system like I almost was. But I interned in DC on the Hill, and all the legislative directors there told me that law school isn't worth the time or the money, and I should do something more worthwhile. See, I find it ironic that the people with time or money can tell a young black girl like me to sit on the sidelines of her dreams. Came home from DC, graduated from UNT in 2012. I was unemployed for 3 months because I didn't take the LSAT, I didn't go to law school. And I remember thinking, if my mom showed up in this moment right here, she'll say, that degree didn't get you too far, did it? I wasn't enough. And so I did what most college graduates do, and I joined corporate America. It took about 2.5 years to realize how unfulfilling that was. And so after work, every day I would join political campaigns and get involved in the community. I was on city council elections, school board elections. Most of the folks that you may see in office now was a part of that behind the scenes. Also did gubernatorial elections. In 2014, had a great opportunity to start a nonprofit with my good friends, Matt Houston and Courtney Brown. We called it Project Zoom. And we were teaching young people from South Dallas, South Oak Cliff, and Pleasant Grove about social justice through the lens of Nelson Mandela. We applied and received a grant for $150,000 from the Fossil Foundation, and we took those same kids to South Africa to teach them about social justice and entrepreneurship on a global level. After that, I've been spending the last 3 years building the capacity of leadership for young people from marginalized communities across the city and country. That led me to work on immigrant issues, LGBT issues, economic justice, racial justice, organizations like People for the American Way, Black Lives Matter, BLM, BYP 100. I remember thinking, this is the work I want to be doing. I'm fighting for people on the margins, yet feeling ashamed that I can't speak about my mother who survived and lived on the margins. But that changed because I went back through those court documents, and I remember finding a 3-page long letter that made me view my mother in a different light, and it gave me purpose. See, it stated that at 16, she ran away from home from Memphis, Tennessee. She followed a man to the East Coast, and that's how she got caught up in drugs and prostitution. She lost her premature child due to domestic violence and cocaine use before she went to California. At this point, I'm starting to question everything that I thought I knew about her. I'm questioning her family and home environment and why she felt she had to leave at such a young age. I'm questioning the criminal justice system and knowing that she moved to New York in the late 80s and there were tough policies like the war on drugs that were instated. I'm questioning how those same tough policies influenced my life as a child in Southern California in the early 90s, hoping and wishing that rehabilitative efforts probably would have kept us together. I started to see that my mother was a fighter. She's very much so a fighter like I am. That she fought for herself and her future in the way that I do for myself and for others. How she is me and I am her. See, What's paralyzed me in telling this story is not just this sense of shame that I've had, but trying to figure out how to overcome. Telling myself that I'm enough, because there's this narrative that I'm brave, that I speak truth to power, that I stand in the face of injustice, but people don't realize how shameful I felt and how much of a coward it's been for me to think that I was ashamed to talk about a mother who sold her body as a means of survival, as if that was a scarlet letter for me and her. And I know it's not. See, I recognize that the students that I work at Paul Quinn College, that they have similar stories like mine, and that we are enough, that you are enough. I look at my girlfriend, Danny, and I want to tell you that you're enough. My dad and my grandma want to thank you for being more than enough for me. I celebrate myself now. I recognize by acknowledging what's happened to me in my past that it's healing. And I thank you. And to my mom, if you watch this in the future, because she's still alive, I hope you see me standing here and know that I am enough. That I see you. That I'm fighting for a world where women like us will be safe. Where children like me do not have to hide in shame. A world that will allow us to belong. And just know that I am constantly putting myself back together. I'm recovering my identity, and I'm reclaiming the wholeness of my life. And I thank you. And Mom, just know on December 12th, that I'm graduating with my master's from UTA and a master's in public administration. Thank you.